So as we go forward, I just wanted to highlight to you what the C4IR is, and it was born out of the partnership that was signed between the South African government and the World Economic Forum, which then created what we have as the C4IR South Africa. And this initiative from this government was that South Africa, when it establishes this center, it should ensure that South Africa has influential voice in the decisions on the regulation of 4IR globally. Now, we all know that it's also contested space on who then regulates the 4IR space. You will have the ITU, you will have the World Economic Forum, you will have the OECD, you will have some others on like the UN one on internet governance. All of those are playing in there, but we need to make sure that we have a voice in that. But secondly, to enhance the country's ability to harness the technology for our own growth and development, right? So as for the international mandate, where we work, there are about 16 4IR centers across the world that we are part of the network on. So what I'm gonna highlight is that whatever project we are working on, I have the ability to harness that capability from 16 centers across the world that can actually work with us. There are a lot of insights that are there, but also what we do, we feed back to them. So that's an important network that we have that everybody here can harness, and we are working on that being harnessed by NEMISA in its work. So this was created with a vision that it should be an indispensable hub for public-private cooperation that's going to shape and harness this 4IR for the societal progress. And what I'm just highlighting is that to us as a center, once we have that vision, this means we should positively shape technology governance. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about technology governance. I'll beam in 1 or 2 slides. And to facilitate public-private sector transformation. So we have to work together, and it aligns very well with what my colleague has just said around the ecosystems. And basically to make sure that we have inclusion, right? And all of these things have to work together. So just highlighting the dimensions of technology governance. And just to make sure that when we talk about technology governance, the understanding is that it's not just that you are talking about government. We are talking about technology governance being in a broader sense. First part is that you are talking about the industry or the sectoral transformation. Every sector. We can talk about any sector. Financial services, we have them here. We can talk about agriculture. You can talk about manufacturing. I think some of the presentations yesterday were covering that, but every sector is impacted by the digital transformation. So we need to make sure that all of those are included. But how do you govern that? And that might actually not necessarily be policies, but it could be standards or the guidelines on how to implement that particular technology. The government also is very critical in unlocking those, because once, all these innovations that we can have, if there is no space, if there's no regulatory framework that enables that, that would be useless. Technology for all. Yes, my colleague here has already talked about the disparity that we have. And if you don't address all of those, the technology will always be, disadvantages will be for the select few. It has to be select for all. Finally, what we have to look at is that it should be sustainable, right? This is our world, and if we don't take care of it, we will not be able to, we will not leave the world to our kids. So I'm just picking an example here. And this is focused a little bit more on the government and what the government needs to look at, and maybe all of us. Before I look at specifically what are the roles of government in enabling this. So I'm taking an example. And this is an example of where you can use AI in the workplace and looking at the human resources field. So if you look at the human resources, you would find that a lot of developers now building tools in almost every stage of HR lifecycle. And HR lifecycle has many. You can attract talent, you can acquire talent, you can develop talent, and then you retain and so on. But across all of that, you would have over 250 tools that you can find currently in there. So what we worked with within the World Economic Forum, and we are part of this team, was to say, can we have a toolkit that then can be used by HR professionals, because they are not necessarily empowered to make the decisions in the AI tools. And this toolkit will be rolling out now in South Africa as well, to say, how do we apply that toolkit for the HR professionals as a guideline on how they select these tools. And government as an employer would also need to look into that particular side. So it's where you are saying, as government, you can enable, but we have to also use the tools. And the key challenges that have been identified that this tries to solve is the issue of bias. How do you remove the bias in the AI tools, particularly in the human resources field? What about the privacy and the data privacy and the security of it? The transparency and explainability. Can the machine that make a decision explain the decisions that it took in that particular site? So these are the things that are tried to address by this particular toolkit. So this is also for everyone. And you can see this is a toolkit, it's a guideline, it's not a policy. And it's not necessarily a standard, but it's more of a toolkit that guides us to do that. So what is the role of government in this whole thing? First, we know that for the industry, whilst you can have a lot of innovation coming from the industry, if there is no regulatory policy that enables it, then this is not going to work. So working together with the industry, the government needs to come up with new policy frameworks, more agile governance models. I know from the ITU side, we tend to use collaborative regulation more than the agile governance. But when you go to OECD, we use agile governance and others and so on. And we always need to know that the technology is used for all. And I'll pick, not to pick on you, Deputy Minister, now that you are here. We are going for the auctioning of spectrum. And auctioning of spectrum is an important thing. Whilst we know that the auction as a process can determine the appetite of the market to pay a certain price, which can maybe used to say this is how the market values a particular asset. But we also know that it is not necessarily meant to then solve the inclusivity part. How do we then balance that if we go for the auction? Do we leave some additional spectrum for balancing the inclusivity? And that part we still need to address. And I think we need to address it now and not leave it behind as we go for others, because otherwise we'll leave the rest of the society behind. How do we get the sustainability there? So in closing, all of this just means whatever we do and whatever government is going to put together to enable this, you need to always be looking at the human centricity. You make these tools, but human is always at the center of it. How do we become human-centric? How do we enable innovation? Right. So that's those are the key messages that we would like to run from that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Just give a few minutes for the slides to come on. So as the slides come on now, first of all, thank you so much for the great introduction, and it's great to be a part of this event, which allows us to align on what we want to do for the future. And I think we all agree that every single industry, every single organization is trying to invest in technology so that we can create an abundant future. I want to talk to you today about how the future we envisage it to turn out, and with respect to preparing for a human-machine partnership where the future of jobs will be driven where we as people partner with machines to create efficiencies, to make our jobs much more efficient. And just to begin with, I would like to give you a short story. Prof talked about one of the systems we built at the bank. When we were building this system, in the middle of implementation, one of the forensic analysts who was going to be a user of the system asked me a very touching question. You've built this system. What job am I going to do? And I realized there's two mistakes I made, which I think is a global mistake all investors and stakeholders make. One, we design solutions while focusing on the technology and the bigger profit, and forget to put everyone in the bigger picture, including the users, and articulating to them how their jobs will change. The second part is that I failed to give them hope because I didn't articulate clearly how important technology was going to be for them, because they were, technology will take away the tedious work. I was focusing more on why we invest in technology. And just like every other institution, we're putting a lot of money. If you look at this graph, it will tell you every single industry is putting billions of dollars of rands in making sure that they reimagine themselves. But we forget about the human part in that equation. And the reality is that we need to keep in mind that success in technology is not very easy. It's very difficult. If you look at these numbers, they paint a reality that the digitization is a very tough area to invest in. And we need every idea, we need everyone to make sure that we increase the chances of success. So to actually give people hope, we need to make sure that we provide we provide every chance to succeed in our investments, because the more we fail, the more we reduce the chances of getting buy-in from everyone. And there's so much evidence that technology is failing. You could go to what's been happening, in Facebook. Sorry, the slides are not moving. Where machines have failed so much, and the reason for failure is attributed to the lack of planning of involving humans in the equation. Even if your algorithms are not working, you can have another case where we saw Knight Capital, one of the biggest US traders, had algorithms for trading. Algorithms were perfect, but because they did not involve human beings in the machine, in the model, things ended up falling apart. It's a reminder again that digitization, adoption of technology is not about technology, it's about that human-machine partnership. So again, there's lots of examples that tell you, listen, a lot of failures we've seen is because people were so much focused on technology and the science and forgot to keep in mind that humanity is important in completing the piece of the puzzle. And if you look at all these failures, it's because of a lack of design or design skills related to how things will work together. And for those of us who are involved in research, you need to involve design thinking in the way you put these solutions together, or else look at all these examples of failures. They're attributed to a lack of making sure we design a new future while giving people hope and making them to be part of the equation. Design thinking is a new skill. It's been there in other areas, but all of us go to the shopping center and we want something that is designed to what we need. But in this instance, we're talking about designing technology solutions while keeping the users in mind, human-centric solutions, how it almost is going to affect their day-to-day lives and how they will respond to them. But this involves being a bit empathetic around what we're trying to design. you need to go beyond money and profits. You need to think about how it affects them. In fact, research has shown that organizations that are design driven are much succeeding faster than just the ones that are traditionally engineering things together. And as part of creating this human machine partnership, we need to develop a mindset that makes sure that while we're starting this journey, we put together a mindset that allows us to articulate what are human beings going to do? How does this improve their quality of life? And therefore, when you look at the design thinking process, the first stage is important. How are you empathetic to everyone who's going to use your solutions? What type of partnerships do you have in understanding the problems? Are you just solving problems to fulfill the design process? Or are you actually solving the problem and making sure you give people hope and drive industrialization? When you look at what's happening in America, they are spearheading adoption of technology because of the great partnership between academic institutions and industries and designing platforms that are running the economy of the world. We need to think about that critically. And when we've been listening to a lot of researchers, they've talked so much about the design process. If you look on the left side of the graph, it's a standard process of research. We get data, we get whatever, we get data, algorithms, but design thinking will allow us to humanize this process. It will allow us to be empathetic. It will allow us to think about how the future will turn out. And this should not be a nice thing to have. It should be an accountability, or else we're likely to end up building a lot of solutions that will not work. We will waste a lot of opportunities. And when you think about the future of government work, every single aspect, whether it's debt collection, whether it's integrating technology on digital platforms, whether it's creating better digital systems, engagement, all of them will require us to think about the role of human beings in complementing each other so that things can work out. So my two messages are this. One, it's about humans and machines, not just machines or not just technology. The second thing is, for those of us involved in creating these solutions, let us upfront design for everyone to be a part of this model so that we can give everyone hope. Thank you so much, and I hope we're going to have a very exciting engagement on this.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And greetings to everyone. Greetings to the Deputy Minister and Board Chairperson. And I'm grateful to have been included in this panel. But I must say that as my fellow panelists were talking and processing what they are saying, I've actually started to say that there's quite a lot that we can pull out together. But today, I would like to focus on, how government services or the future of work in government is going to be like, or the new picture that will emerge, with a particular focus on education. And I'm doing this because, well, in a variety of government services that are being, or services that are being provided by government, education is the single biggest. I should say, maybe health as well, safety and security, but I think education is the single biggest. If you look at the investment that the government makes into education every year, it takes the biggest chunk of the budget. And we believe that that's where the biggest impact can be made to change the fortunes of the country and to change to enable the government to become a developmental state. And as you know, that concept of a developmental state stems from the point of view that we realize that our government, our country requires a lot of development, and that our people are left behind in many areas, let alone technologies or technological developments. And therefore, transforming our education system to align with the new developments, adopting new technologies will be quite critical. And there's been quite a lot of debates about how can we make it, how can we derive more value out of that. I believe that digitalizing our education provision will actually help the country to take a leap or to fast track or to accelerate the development agenda. And in that, I'm just thinking about, the concept of smart education delivery that will take into account the entire ecosystem, not just the teacher and the learner in the classroom, but rather the entire ecosystem and the various actors that are in the space. And I was just thinking about, except for connectivity, the issue of connectivity and data, the ability for learners and teachers or the schooling system to access information will be quite critical. But once that is achieved, if we achieve that, I think there will be a massive revolution that will happen. I was just thinking from a clean page, trying to imagine what could happen, painting that scenario. And I could see, the likes of AI coming into the space, into education space, and as well as, or in the form of machine learning playing a very important role in the provision of education itself. And that not necessarily displacing the teachers from what they are doing, but augmenting what they are doing so that the teachers can play a much more meaningful role from a human point of view in terms of supporting learners or playing that, or bringing that social value in educating the learners, while you would have various learning areas or subjects, let me call them that, that would be housed in a platform or platforms where learners can access them anytime and can be able to engage with them in an interactive manner at a technical level of a subject. If maybe they are dealing with a specific topic, but they would be able to engage with that subject, assisted by artificial intelligence, of course. And I could see that our teachers would need, how their work would change, would need to really be able to work with machine learning enabled tools to augment the learning for the learners themselves. And I was also just thinking that once we have these capabilities, the content that is out there is massive in a variety of learning areas. Imagine a rural school being able to access that content. And therefore we would need, very good content curation capabilities. So the education system will require experts in content curation or content curators. So I foresee that, and just think about games or gaming, which is also at the center of the technological revolution. How games are becoming even near reality. And how they can be used in the education settings. So I foresee that we would need maybe gamers or developers that would, be able to develop games that align to our subjects, that help these learners to get motivated to eventually finish off what they are supposed to be doing. Apart from that, just as I thought about the metaverse, this new developments around the metaverse, you know, augmented reality, virtual reality, lately mixed reality, and the potential that it has to revolutionize and change our education system, such that, you know, you would be able to have virtual tours for learners, you'd be able to have, you know, augmented experiences, reality experiences that will support learning in a rural setting, for instance, or in a township setting, or in any other setting that can help to accelerate, you know, or to improve the quality of education. Lastly, we know that for most of our schools, I mean, the communities are not that involved, especially when it comes to, I mean, the likes of, you know, parent involvement, especially in rural areas, in previously disadvantaged communities. I mean, if we bring platforms that are enabled by technologies to engage the parents in the learning of their kids, that can as well really revolutionize the education system. Apart from that, cybersecurity remains to be a critical issue. I believe that in the near future, we should be seeing cyber threats moving closer and closer, even to the likes of the education system. The data that is lying there, it's massive. You can imagine what can be done about the data, and therefore more capabilities will need to be built in the education system around cybersecurity to protect, you know, the information. Lastly, my colleagues, including my colleague, the ZEDNA CEO is here. We've been engaging and working towards partnering into supporting schools. And we are having a dream of having every learner having a digital identity, like an email address, every school having a website through which it can market itself, through which it can share content with those various stakeholders. We believe that digitalization will help, you know, to have learners who are more enlightened to use digital tools, and therefore this is how we see, you know, the education system changing, maybe starting from there. And of course, all these other areas that I've mentioned will become important. Data science is also central in that teachers or the education system engages with a lot of learner data, you know, from how they behave to how they perform, the patterns that emerge. Imagine that being aggregated at a school level, at a regional level, at a provincial level and national level to help us see where we are doing things right and where we need to improve. And even the role of the teachers themselves to have some basic data science or data analytics skills using certain technological tools will become imperative. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a clap.